Living in our garden is an old friend. His name is Kermit, and you'll probably recognise him, but you probably wouldn't expect him to look so worse for wear. Oh, poor Kermit. Yeah, the term weathered was made for this particular Kermit, and I can't remember how old he is. I'm not too sure what this sculpture is made of. It's not stone. I'm thinking it's likely a kind of resin, but as you can see, the paint has worn off in most places. The mouth has been holding onto its colour because it's the most protected part, but everywhere else is losing the battle. And while there's a certain charm in sculptures like this, becoming a part of the nature around it, part of me quite enjoys the grey, stony aesthetic of this. I think it's time this Kermit had a bit of a refresh. He's been watching over our garden for a long time, and perhaps a fresh coat of paint will see him through another bundle of years. Before we start, we definitely need to clean him up a bit. He's got a muddy bottom going on. Okay Kermit, sit tight, we'll get you spruced. Now we've brushed off all of the dusty dirt and cobwebs, it's time for a bath. This is simply a bowl of warmish, soapy water. Ooh, feel the bubbles around your rocks, Kermit. La la la, cleaning in the crevices. I couldn't really film this too well as I was outside and I only have a mini tripod, but to be frank, it's just Kermit laying in a bowl of water at various angles, looking awkward. I just kept moving him around, trying to scrub away as much dirt as I could. At many points he didn't look much different, and I thought that maybe I wasn't getting much off. But in looking at the water afterwards, I mean, it does look pretty murky and pond-like, so good job Kermit, it was a successful bath after all. After all of that dampness, it was time to pop Kermit into a sunny patch and let him dry off completely. It wasn't due to rain, so I let him sit there until the next day when phase 2 would be kicking off. So having clamped Kermit around the nosy in a way I hadn't realised actually looks a bit traumatic for him. We got to sanding. I used a fine grain piece of sandpaper because I wasn't sure how the surface would take it and I didn't want to make any lasting marks. I wasn't too sure at first, but the longer I rubbed, the more the surface responded pretty well. This is how he looks after the sanding. Now, I know he doesn't look fully paint-free. Disregarding the mouth, which I mainly sanded around the edges of as it was too tricky to fully remove, there are still patches of green on the rest of him, especially in crevices like around the legs. However, what I focused on was more the feeling of the surface rather than the look of it. This could well be the wrong thing to do, but I figured if the surface felt completely smooth where the edge of the paint met the paint-free places, well, that was good enough for me. Bear in mind, I'm not a professional garden sculpture painter, I'm just making this up as I go along. So now Kermit is super buff. He doesn't look it, but he is, I swear. It's time to get sprayed. Oh my. Should I use this as an undercoat? Who knows, but the point is, I did. Too late now. A nice person once gave me some old cans of car spray paints and I found this grey primer in the box which I figured could work pretty well. Amazingly, the nozzle hadn't gunged up and still worked perfectly, so I plonked Kermit on some newspaper outside and started spraying. I don't spray paint much, but when I do, there is always one consistent element: the wind. No matter how calm the air seems when I start, I always seem to be standing in the direction the spray wants to blow back at. This is why my sprays are in short bursts. I spray, then run away. Oh hi! Yes, a fully grey Kermit is a bit unsettling, but I was actually really pleased with how that primer covered the sculpture. It gave a really nice even surface to paint on, and it means we can now fully get going with the refresh. It's funny how every time I put Kermit down in a new place, I patted his head. There, buddy. Incoming paint truck! So I'm using outdoor garden paints for this project. I have two kinds, Cuprinol sample pots in various colours and a few Ronseal tins. Amazingly, I didn't have to go out and buy these for this. I already had them and they are years old. I'll explain that in a bit, but I figured they could work for Kermit, and so I dug them all out and here we are. So how should we start? Do you want to lay down here, Kermit? Is that comfy? Maybe. I have a couple of stiff, bristly brushes for any rough, dry brushing types of painting, and a couple of sticks for stirring my pots with. Rather appropriately, I'm starting with a shade called Dusky Gem. I go by so many names. As I took the lid off, I remembered that they have brushes attached to the lids, so I figured I might as well use that to get started. I'm using this colour to rough brush over the rock that Kermit's sitting on to lighten it up and get some texture going. Because my first splodges were a bit full on, the lower painting is a bit thicker, but it doesn't matter. I still think the overall look is effective and stone-like. I decided to try and add some green to the underside of the rocks for a mossy vibe. It was the wrong kind of green, so I thought I'd also add a bit of brown. No, don't do it. I knew pretty much immediately that that was not the right brown. It looked like I was smearing poo on the rocks. Ugh. So brown was abandoned for black, and I tried to muddy up all of the weirdness that I had already smeared around. It's lucky this bit was on the bottom, as it didn't really matter what mess I made down there. I also should have waited for the light grey to dry before doing any of this, but I was impatient and I didn't, so everything was a big old mishmash of smudgy muddle. Oh well. And so, onwards to eyeballs! I figured these would need a good few coats of this white paint to cover the grey and not look streaky, so I started with them first. The paint went on really smoothly, and with a nice flat-headed brush, it wasn't too tricky to do neatly. They were incredibly satisfying to paint, even if they did leave Kermit looking, While the white paint was out, I decided to also paint his collar with it. I didn't have a full idea yet about the design that I was aiming for, but I thought the collar should be different to the body regardless, so even if I painted over it later, the white would be a good light undercoat to set it apart. By now, the rock paint had dried a bit, so I also put a few white highlights on some rocky edges, as well as some black inside some of the little rocky nooks. This is how it was looking overall. A bit odd, but sort of going towards something. Who knows what? And so we come to the biggest decision. What colour to paint Kermit? I had decided against green simply because I felt like being a bit more playful and making this particular Kermit unique to me. I had gone through different thoughts: rainbow Kermit, geometric patchwork Kermit, botanical pattern Kermit, yellow Kermit, very tempted, but in the end I plumped for purple Kermit. People have lovely resting faces, which look perfectly peaceful as they are creating. Mine looks like this. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection. So at this point, Kermit looks pretty jolly purple, and it feels a bit deep and shiny for my liking. After a few touch-ups in the makeup chair, I decided to grab a small bit of sponge and dab on some lighter purpley tones. I mixed up some purple and white together and did a bit of random sponge smooshing. At this point, I should say, whenever I use this paint, I'm conscious of the way it dries. It can firm up quite quickly, but not fully dry to the point where you can paint over the top of it quite easily. However, if I were to leave this overnight and come back to carry on painting it the next day, I would have some issues. Because this is outdoor paint, I found that once it fully dries, it of course becomes water resistant, and it also resists more paint being put on top of it. Therefore, when I want to paint creatively with this stuff, I have become used to starting early on in the day so that I can get everything painted before it needs to sit overnight. Once I finished sponging, I took a break for lunch. See you in a bit, Kermit. So while I paint Kermit's butt with a flower, the reason I already have these paints is that when I first started Gemma the Pen, I made personalised wooden signs for people. I'd paint them with whatever design they wanted, and I needed a range of colours to do that. Sample pots or small tins were the perfect way of doing it. At some point, I realised the amount of time that I put into making those signs wasn't sustainable for the amount that people would pay for them, and so my sign making days stopped. But my time making them had given me creative confidence, and it led me to try other things. It has been a good few years since I bought this paint, and I'm amazed that it is all still so usable. Hurrah for the long-lasting garden paint! So as you've gathered by now, I've gone floral with Purple Kermit. The train of thought here was to echo some water plants, so the bigger flowers were meant to be a little bit like water lilies, and the trails of petals were meant to be similar to water hawthorn. They ended up not quite like that, but hey ho, near enough. I ummed and ahed over whether to add anything to the white collar, but in the end I thought it best to keep it plain. What with all the floral busyness going on, the collar felt like a way to break it up a bit. I wasn't too sure about how much to do on the face. I decided to keep the mouth fully purple. When he sits in the garden, you can hardly see the mouth anyway, as it points downward, and so I saved myself the fiddliness and left it alone. I added one flower coming out of the mouth across the nose, which I like, but after that I got a bit spooked about adding more. I didn't want more florals in that area to compete too much with the eyes. At some point you have to find a place to stop, and this is where I did. I left him a couple of days in the shed to fully dry and seal up, and then introduced him back into the garden. So here he is in all his purpliness. Is it too much? I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks so, but there's a bigger part of me that cheers whenever I see him. I really enjoy the pop of bright energy he brings, sitting amidst the green. Anywho, thanks so much for spending this chunk of time with me. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what colour you would have painted Kermit. It's okay to say green. If you're not subscribed to this random arty channel of mine just yet, well, if you're still here listening to this, I think now's the time. You've already become a pen gem by reaching the end. Let's catch up again in my next video. I'll meet you there. Stay curious, keep making happy, and I'll see you next time.